Welcome back to the Doc's Diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. I'm Travis Justice. He's Dr. Rob Zadiska. And we're going to talk about the not-so-special teams because there's not one, but two block punts Nebraska had against them against Rutgers.
And that was ugly. I mean, this is one of those things where, I mean, in terms of what guys are looking at, how Rutgers is disguising looks, I don't know what they prepared for. All I know is what we see on screen is you're seeing these overloaded fronts, and that's something that Nebraska is going to have to be able to make adjustments to. And so
this is the first block punt. We're only going to show the first one.
It is, because it's basically the same problem on both. What ends up happening is you look at the number of defenders over here on the punt, and you've got it overloaded over here where you've got 5 guys over here. Now, theoretically, if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Theoretically, you ought to be able to pick that up. And I'll admit, it's harder than it sounds when you're looking at it. But the biggest thing is that you just got to pay attention to is that the coverage needs to basically be coming this way, and these guys need to be making a call that you've got an overloaded front over here on the punt team's
Question
left.
for you. So if you're overloading here, right? If you're going to overload here, that means these guys have here?
You're going to have one of these 3 has to be keeping their eyes over here because they'll be a free guy. But kind of generally what you would think is somebody's coming out. Now, the other thing that you got to pay attention to, you got the gunner up here at the top. Nobody's on him, and I assume the expectation is that they're thinking, okay, this guy's going to drop out and go cover that gunner going downfield. But when you're running a punt block on defense, you got to take a guy from somewhere, and they've obviously taken the guy covering the gunner, brought him up. And in this situation, you have to account for that, and you got to protect here before you worry about this guy running free downfield. You just got to assume that, hey, somebody's coming, bring the coverage over, get the guys on the line first. If there's a free guy over here, one of these guys gets to pick him up. And they just didn't do that. They just didn't shift that protection. And you got a guy coming completely unfree who just absolutely lights up Buscemi, Buscemi had a great game.
Averaged 50 yards a punt.
He completed,
here's another look at it, right?
Right here. And you just see the guy just comes completely untouched. You've got 4 guys right here. 4 defenders. You've only got 3 blockers. And again, you got to have somebody. Now, the other thing is make the call and have that gunner come in. Yeah. I mean, that would be the additional blocker that you could pull in on the play. But you've got to be heads up enough to do that and not leave an unblocked guy up there and hope he gets caught in the wash, because it's not going to happen.
Now, there was a lot of booing when Buscemi got hit, but once that ball was tipped,
if
he's
it's
fair game.
touched, you can light the guy up. And I looking at it, I don't think it was a dirty hit on him. No. The guy's laying out for the ball. If the punter's in the way, if you're pretty certain that you're going to actually hit the ball, you lay out, punter be damned, and what happens. And so I don't have a problem with that. My problem is that you've got to account for that extra guy, and whether you shift the coverage over or you bring the gunner back in to block, you've got to do one of those two things, because you can't leave a completely unblocked guy coming in and exposing your punter like that.
Special teams continue to be a problem. In yesterday's Doc's Diagnosis, we actually showed a run, the first touchdown of the game, which was 4th and 2. That was in the first quarter. Normally, you kick a field goal right there.
It is.
But you say, screw it, you're going to go for it.
It was a little bit of a statement, and I think Nebraska's at that point to have to win some of these close games when they're still having some of these penalties, when they're still having some of these special teams miscues. You're going to have to make kind of some gutsy calls like that and go for it on occasion.
For Dr. Rob Zadiska, I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you next week on the Doc's Diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union.
Whether you've just bought your first home or you've had your dream home for 20 years, life is bound to throw a curveball eventually. When unexpected surprises arise, Centris can help you use the equity your home has already accrued to your advantage. Learn more at centrisfcu.org.